Hi, welcome to Team Dicey. Matt.
James.
This is a video that talks of our journey with firstly Ceres, 14 years of Ceres, under the ownership of James, and now our rebrand is Dicey.
And why we're doing the journey, what we've learnt on the way, and what the key motivators were for making the change. Ceres was started in 2005, and I naively thought it'd actually be quite easy to sell wine. What a fool I was. We tried a lot of different things with Ceres. Originally had our own sales representative trying to go direct. That didn't really work very well. Off-premise supermarket distributor, and that was a complete disaster as well. I think through the good work that Matt had done with making some great wine, we got approached by Red and White Cellar, who's an amazing distributor.
I had a fantastic run at Mount Difficulty. I was there for 22 years. But it was also time for me to focus on our own project and something all about us and smaller and more personal. Ceres was a natural fit for us as a name. It was where we were born in South Africa, so it connected in that plane. But it was also the Roman goddess of agriculture and the harvest. So there were a couple of different reasons that it felt like it was a natural fit.
It's actually really hard to choose a name for a brand. The suitability of Ceres as a name, a lot of people can't say it. Ceres, a lot of people can't spell it. And even friends of ours who'd known that we were doing some sort of project for a number of years were always a bit awkward around the name. And that really helped when we came to have a stop and think moment with Matt exiting Mount Difficulty as to, is this the brand and the name that we really wanted to have about what we were doing?
We'd engaged Morven McCauley from Tradecraft to help us with sales and marketing at Ceres.
I do a lot of work around thinking about what the outside of the bottle looks like, knowing that the inside of the bottle is already taken care of. Ceres was a place that meant a lot to you as a family, and from a storytelling point of view, that's why it did resonate and it did have legitimacy. The problem with that is that you can become very reluctant to let go. A brand from a different category that had gained utter market ownership of that brand name, Ceres. And that in itself was a really major problem, because when you tasted the wine with anybody, the first thing they said was, I didn't realise Ceres Organics made wine.
One of the things that Morven likes to do is to run a workshop to understand who we are and what we're all about. She put us in the yellow room of awkwardness together, and out of that came an aha moment, and actually, what are we doing? Those things are always somewhat awkward. Navel-gazing, introverted questions, things that you don't necessarily like doing or saying, but it also gives some really valuable insight into where do you want to go.
What came out of that day has been the tight foundations of where the brand sits now. There's not too many winery brands that aren't very personal. That in itself is the gift, because it's a personal story and everybody's unique. So it's finding how that story can be reiterated into something that is visual and can sit on a very small piece of real estate, which you have on the outside of that glass bottle.
Like all great label and brand design, mostly in the wine space, you start with a label and then craft a brand around it. What for me the yellow room of discomfort created was something that really resonated both with Matt and with I, and we share actually very similar visions about what Dicey could and should be.
I've never wanted to be about us or me or be an ego project or put my name on the back label.
We're still feeling very uncomfortable about using the word Dicey. Morv just told us to get over ourselves. Actually, our ego was getting in the way actually of accepting what was a great brand that you could work a whole lot of stories and angles with. If you knew us, it meant something, but if you didn't know us, it was also intriguing.
He didn't want to come across like an arrogant wanker putting his surname on the bottle. I don't know if it's any more arrogant than trying to do a matey-uppy name that might help you sell your wine to the consumer, because that's less authentic than just putting your name on the bottle. We don't need to put the brothers on it. It's just Dicey. You guys are Dicey in every sense of the word. That's ownership. There's an economic, clean, definitive, fuck, that's a bit tricky. That's a bit dicey. So the usability of that word is really great, and it's a golden ticket. So the job was to go and find a great graphic designer who could take that, the work we did from the workshop, the name Dicey, and put them together in a way that actually compellingly told that story. Felt like a really true reflection of you guys, produced something that was really exciting and new, and gave you guys a fighting chance against the 700 other wineries there are in New Zealand.
So one of the things with brands is trying to create your own space, to find your own little piece of silence in the noise, the cacophony of vineyard brands that come out of Central Otago.
We put the pitch out to a number of designers, got quotes back in, and Arch and Toby won the race by quite a long way, I think, from a point of view of their desire to truly actually understand the story before they tried to sit down and
Design something.
A
couple of reasons we always like to come and visit the site and meet the people involved is that it's the only real way you can get a true understanding of what you're dealing with, you know.
The big impact on the kind of thing we're going to come up with, knowing your personalities and what you're into, and you know what you're probably going to like and what you're probably not going to like.
Wines are very, it's very sort of, everyone's doing this, essentially a version of each other, right? So the juice itself's similar, but the people and the places are not. So it's really key for us to kind of get in there early and meet and greet.
Come and do this intense piece of work, and then we go, but you're left with it, and so you've got to be happy with it. And being winemakers and producers yourselves, it's got to be a little bit. It's sort of the clothes you wear, right?
Think that personality of the brand, and does it actually fit with the personality of the people?
The landscape was so unique in that first visitation that we thought, well, that's one approach. Let's just sort of show this crazy sort of lunar landscape and embrace it. And then I guess from there you go, well, okay, so if that's our sort of more first instinct, what happens when we kind of try and push the boat out and think a bit more conceptually with it? And that's where the two panels sort of came into play.
Both Matt and I really gelled with that third concept.
And I guess what we liked about the two panels is they're sort of on the piss, right? They're on that which ties into the name, Dicey. The word marks on the slope. It's sort of the whole proposition of making wine in a place like yours is kind of a dicey one. So when we were talking about those two panels, we always had this idea of, you know, two forces at play, two brothers, two neighbours, two properties side by side, and the way that the Toby designed a beautiful the way the panels interact with each other. So there's sort of an optical illusion there. So they're sort of in harmony with each other, but they're also in opposition. And I would suggest that's true of any kind of sibling relationship, you know. You love the guy, but also he annoys you, you know. So there's a bit of that. There is a bit of that. There's that tension, and we wanted to capture that tension that's sort of inherent in your whole kind of proposition.
Graphically, we felt that if you're playing a game, which is that the whole thing is on an angle all the time, then that should be the game, and everything else should be straightforward. Everything is sort of should be in support of that idea.
Yeah, if you've got a fancy idea, then with a fancy typeface, it's sort of, you lose the purity.
Undoes it. Yeah.
Where we landed was kind of looking forward rather than looking back.
Yeah.
So I think we've got some exciting plans, haven't we, boys, for the sort of fruitier numbers coming up. The labels themselves, they're a canvas, really.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about them. The labels are a canvas for kind of new ideas as well. So
when we brought in-house down to Central Otago, we jumped in the car together and went and stood at the top of the Nevis and looked down over the sea of brown that is the Upper Clutha Basin.
What was your overwhelming sense when you got down here?
Brown. The landscape was incredibly brown, and it was all brown on brown. In fact, we sort of joked that it was 50 shades of brown.
When they responded to us with their initial brief, all the colours were all completely brown or shades of brown, and we felt like we were in a bit of a 1970s porn movie, actually, with the amount of beige that came up.
So we always knew colour was going to play a big role in the design direction.
So what I asked Adele to do, who's an artist, is to create a swatchboard of the colours she typically uses in a lot of the paintings she does of the landscapes around here. And that swatchboard became the genesis of the colours you see on the labels today.
So much of that whole developing a brand is you talking in your own little circle of nepotism, and you have this little internal feedback loop, and there's always this concern that you get really excited by what you're going to do, but how's that going to translate into the real world, into the marketplace, into what people look, feel, and think about it. So it's not until you actually get it out there that you get that feedback. We were keen to do a launch event, and Tradecraft came up with a really nice innovative option of utilising Western Springs VIP area. The VIP is definitely somewhat of an acronym here, and it was lovely because there are lots of connections with Western Springs. Both James and I went to our first large concerts there, and James happens to be a bit of a petrol head, much more so than me. The first time we actually got to show our wines, show the brand, show what we'd been working on internally, the public was a roadie. Alice and I firstly joined by James later, and it was really lovely to have these labels that we'd been working on and the brand that we'd been working on internally suddenly be exposed to external parties, and they all had a fantastic reaction to it.
So I joined Matt and Alison in Wellington, and then Ali flew home, and Matt and I carried on the rest of the North Island tour. At that stage, Auckland had gone into a lockdown, so we had to do a bit of a reshuffle and do the sort of the central southern half of the North Island.
A little bit of squeaky windscreen wiper action. Day 2 of the roadie. Day 4, Dicey roadie. Well, quick count up after losing the plot yesterday. We're now day 8. Day 11.
Oh, so what day are we now? Day X?
No, we're day something now.
And it was all going swimmingly until we just got out of Wanganui, where at 5:30 in the morning I leaned over and remarked to Matt about how awesome Moby the blue whale was going. And no more than 5 minutes later, rattle, rattle, clunk, and that was the end.
Unfortunately, we've had to call roadside assistance, and we've got a tow truck coming out of Whanganui. And yeah, that might be the end of this episode.